This week, Donald Trump has offered an assortment of awful behavior, an amuse-douche, if you will.
Trump tweeted Omarosa's a dog, which is weird since according to Stormy Daniels, he's the one who likes getting hit with a rolled-up magazine.
Michael Cohen announced he's taking the fifth, though the end of that sentence could be woman who had an affair with Trump's money.
He drinks from a glass the same way he won the election, with a lot of help from the base.
An anonymous White House official penned a Times op-ed against the president and, like the chalupa I had yesterday, disagrees with him and is bringing him down from the inside.
Pelosi is like the Golden Gate Bridge, strong, red, and structured. Meanwhile, Trump's like Lombard Street. People only want a picture with him because he's crooked. After an appeals court ruled Donald Trump is not immune to prosecution, and I'm gonna guess also tuberculosis. What the hell is going on there?
Trump said illegal immigrants should be deported immediately without wasting the time of a judge or trial. Yeah, let's not strain the legal system, says the guy who's been involved in 3,500 court cases.
Clearing the way for Donald Trump, who puts the hump in presumptive nominee. The president's illegal behavior is like an upper lip. We all know it's there, but for some reason, John Bolton's hiding it.
Trump introduced a new conspiracy that Google has a liberal bias that posts anti-Trump stories more often. Mr. President, stop being a terrible person and Google won't deliver those stories. It's like getting bills and blaming the post office. Final notice, final notice, final notice. This mailman's an asshole.
Again, the story's not true, though it should be noted, as FEMA does now have to spend money addressing Trump's rumors on their website, that technically classifies him as a disaster. Trump secretly tested positive for COVID days earlier than we thought. Though how would we know? He lost his sense of taste back in the 80s. The censure is for persecution of ordinary citizens engaged in legitimate political discourse, a phrase doing more heavy lifting than the guy jacking the podium in the Capitol Rotunda. Another plot involved sending false electors to the National Archives led by Giuliani, the perfect choice to hide something fake without anyone noticing. The highlight was when he called Democrat oversight bullshit, which any rancher will tell you is a high source of methane, which accelerates the greenhouse effect, so technically you just admitted to climate change. Defending his stance on tariffs by insisting that he was always very good at mathematics. Exactly. Most mathematicians don't have the courage to shout over the phone demanding numbers they can't find, and then sending a mob to stop other people from counting.
In an attempt to improve the president's image, his legal team has added former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, the guy responsible for polishing a giant bloated landmass representing unrealistic extremes of capitalism and morbid excess. He also cleaned up Times Square.
As Hurricane Florence batters the Carolinas, our intrepid leader is describing it as
tremendously big and tremendously wet.
Alright, what'd you go with? I went, so is whatever's cutting off the oxygen to your brain. That's also a description for the blue wave after the midterms, and that's not what Melania says.
Which I think makes him a true patriot, is putting up collateral for a loan to pay off a fine for lying about having collateral might be the most American thing I've ever heard. And the president's refusing to unveil President Obama's official White House portrait, which is surprising since he can't stop framing him. Trump apparently spends $230,000 a day on lawyer fees. Wow, even out of office, he's still a job creator. President says he's still under audit, which I'll only believe if that's the name of a stripper he met at the West Palm Spearmint Rhino. The president continues his hard sell of hydroxychloroquine, which again, you shouldn't even use in Scrabble. The WHO doesn't think it's a good idea, or as Trump hears it, who doesn't think it's a good idea? President blamed Prime Minister Trudeau for cutting his cameo from the Canadian airing of Home Alone 2. No word yet on whether the Senate will cut his cameo from U.S. politics. Remember when an adult film star hush money trial was more than enough to take down anyone in government? If you listen, you can hear centuries of unfaithful, disgraced politicians rolling over on their mistresses. The president downplayed the concerns about the virus. Of course he thinks it's safe. His doctor looks like he thinks coronavirus is just a slick way to order a drink.
Trump says it wasn't illegal because it was his money and not the campaign's. Whew! So it wasn't our cash. You paid off the porn star with the money you made underpaying construction workers, engaging in housing discrimination, funneling donations, faking universities, and strong-arming tenants out of their homes. Good! For a second, I thought there was a question of your morality. Trump said that he saw it on TV. Wow, the guy has the same level of critical analysis I had at 10 watching David Copperfield, though Trump would go on to actually make liberty disappear.
However, we did learn Trump had deep reservations about Michael Flynn, though I've always been more worried about his dinner reservations with Sergei Kislyak.
1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted on the dangerous trek up through Mexico.
Wow, not to mention once they get to America, they can be assaulted on airplanes, at nightclubs, resorts, dressing rooms, Lake Tahoe, the US Open, Ray Charles concerts, and backstage at Letterman.
And after James Comey said in interviews he can't deny the possibility of the sordid details of the Steele dossier, the press secretary said Mr. Comey's a leaker begging for good PR, which turns out is an anagram for Mr. Comeover begged for a good artful pee leak.
The president updated the country on his health by saying, quote, "I tested very positively in another sense, so this morning. Yeah, I tested positively towards negative, right, so I tested perfectly this morning, meaning I tested negative." The president also plans to unveil his new re-election slogan, "Make America fail at the problem of not being not great again." The president announced we'll be removing our troops from Syria, which is a shock to his mistresses who say he never pulls out of a fertile crescent. Gross. The New York Times says Trump received shady financial help from his father well into adulthood. Hey, finally something he and I have in common.
Call John Bolton a sick guy, though if you want to single someone out in a pandemic you failed to stop, you need to be more specific.
At least your leaders are debating what's best for your country. The only way Trump would mention Brexit is if he's trying to tweet breakfast. Which then golden escalated, great joke Dave, into a series of angry tirades, including the now infamous line about dogs and cats being eaten, prompting RFK Jr. to nervously delete his Seamless history.
No one knows what was said at the personal meeting between Trump and Putin, but I'll bet the autocrat laid into the EU touted the power of controlling the media and imprisoning dissenters as a deterrent, and then Putin probably said some stuff. A blustering orange mass on the East Coast is threatening untold levels of destruction, causing Americans to say, "You mean another one?" The president's is described in graphic detail in Stormy Daniels' new book, which I assume is also called Fear. Alright, why is John Brennan a danger to America? Sanders read Trump's statement that he, quote, has a history that calls into question his objectivity and credibility, which the president dictated between paying off porn stars and bragging about a wall he's not going to build.
He touted strong economic numbers, though the economy is like the president's belt. It looks worse when you adjust for inflation.